boys and girls, to chapter 15 of Freddy. Sophie came back, accompanied by Mr. John. I watched them as I peeped warily over the edge of the balance. He had obviously been reluctant to let Sophie carry the bag of litter by herself. For what he had brought along could hardly be called a bag. It was more like a huge sack. He was carrying it clamped under one arm and his leather briefcase under the other. "Well," he said, pushing the bedroom door shut with his foot, "where shall we put the litter?" But Sophie didn't reply. She was staring wide-eyed at my cage. "Look," she stammered. "The door!" Then she cried, "Freddy's gone!" "Oh." Mr. John put the bag of litter on Sophie's chair. "Easy, kid," he said. "Maybe he's in his burrow." Sophie reached the cage in 2 strides. "Come out, Freddy!" she called. Then almost imploringly, "Come out, Freddy, please!" She waited. At last she reached into the cage and did what she had been tactful enough never to do before. She folded back the cover over my burrow. There was food inside. I eyed it sadly, but no Freddy. "He's gone!" She started to sob. It was heartbreaking for both of us, but unavoidable. Suddenly, she raised her head. "The door was shut, I'm positive." Mr. John inspected the cage. All at once, he bent forward. "What's that?" He pointed to my pencil, which was clearly visible. "How did that get there?" "Oh, that. It was a present from me. He wanted it." "Is that so?" Mr. John rubbed his nose. "Perhaps he... That would explain a couple of things." "What? What?" "Like certain changes to my bookshelf." "I don't understand." "Nor do I, to be honest. But there's a possibility Freddy opened the cage door by himself." "By himself? How?" "By using the pencil as a lever. It looks as if he's run away." "Run away? You really think so?" Sophie looked over at her desk. "But where to?" She kneeled down on the floor and peered under the bed. "Where are you, Freddy?" "Listen, kid." Mr. John squatted down beside her. "Whatever made him vanish, he's probably hiding someplace you can't find him. You only get him back if he wants to come back." I really have to say this. The most sensible remarks I'd ever heard from any human being came from Mr. John. "Here's a suggestion for you, Sophie," Mr. John said. "Put a couple of mealworms in his cage, and we'll leave the room. We'll wait a while, then see if he's turned up again, okay?" Sophie nodded. She emptied a paper bag of mealworms, 5 of them, no less, onto my feeding place and called, "Mealworms, Freddy!" That done, they both went out. I gazed intently down from my hiding place, but not all at the mealworms. They didn't interest me in the least, not now. I was interested in something altogether different. Something lying on the floor, just where Mr. John had been squatting down. His leather briefcase. At first I merely stared at the thing. It was lying on its side, not standing upright, which meant that the flap was on top and readily accessible from the floor. There was enough of a gap beneath it for a very small rodent to slip inside with ease. Suddenly, I realized why I was staring so hard. The briefcase was my escape route, my passport to the outside world. I didn't have to stay here with Sophie, Gregory, and Mom. I could use Mr. John to take me back to his apartment. Once there, I could make up my own mind where to burrow. If any of my readers think I clambered down the curtain without a second thought and disappeared into the briefcase like lightning, they're dead wrong. Some decisions are glaringly obvious. The briefcase was divided into 2 compartments. As I crouched there amid an assortment of books with German titles, why on earth did the man tote them around in the first place? I regretted my decision a dozen times and applauded it a moment later. My doubts centered less on whether I ought to leave Sophie's home than on whether I would be welcome at Mr. John's. If Sir William didn't want me back, I might as well pack up and move on right away. I can hardly wait to see if he's there. That was Sophie, outside in the hallway. The door opened, and I heard her and Mr. John come into the room. There was silence for a moment. Then Mr. John said, "Well, it seems he has other plans. To be on the safe side, leave the cage door open. Maybe he'll turn up after all. And now, I have to go." With all my might, I sank my teeth into the upper edge of the leather divider between the two compartments. I didn't want to be pitched off into the depths and crushed by books when Mr. John picked up his briefcase. But he righted it up with care and picked it up quite gently. "See ya, kid," said Mr. John. "Goodbye, Sophie," I thought. "Forever, if I'm lucky." Mr. John left the apartment and set off for home. It was the third time I had made that trip, twice in one direction and once in the other. The route was becoming central to my personal destiny. Mr. John trudged up the step flight of stairs to his apartment, opened the front door, and went into the study. If he put the briefcase on his desk, I would be at my wits' end once more. The only solution would be to get in touch with Sir William and ask him to lift me down in the secret. But Mr. John deposited the briefcase on the floor. Then his footsteps receded in the direction of the kitchen. Nimble as a chipmunk, I squeezed through the gap, climbed out, and slid to the floor. Where to now? Under the chest of drawers in the corner? It was so near the ground that I felt safe there, at least for the moment. This time, heaven knows, I was genuinely glad the air reeked of tomcat and guinea pig. The smell was like a breath of home. "No, my friend, it's not as simple as that." Sir William regarded me with his glowing green eyes. It was evening now, and Mr. John had left the apartment to give a German lesson someplace. As for me, I had gone to report back, so to speak, to Sir William, who was waiting for me at the door to the living room. "You come waltzing in here, planning to live in hiding?" Sir William's teeth glinted in the gloom. "How do you think you're going to manage for food?" "Well," I said, "Enrico and Caruso get more than they need. I could..." "You think they'll let you have some?" "Yes, if you tell them to." "My dear Freddy, do you imagine I only have to swish my tail a couple of times for things to turn out the way I want? In this establishment, all decisions are communal decisions. Come with me." We joined the guinea pigs in the room next door. They were sitting up and waiting for us in silence. They didn't embark on their performance until we were standing outside their cage, until their audience had settled down, so to speak. "If it isn't good old Freddy!" cried Enrico. "He's back! By all that's holy! Well, I never!" "Hooray!" Caruso chimed in, and we were both convinced he'd be gone forever. "But is he here, our company, to save her? Or has he come to ask us for a favor?" They had obviously overheard my conversation with Sir William. Enrico sighed. "He'll need to find himself someplace to hide." Caruso agreed. "Some nook or cranny. How undignified." "And where's his food to come from? Let's share some with him. We got some food." "Of course, we'll sit beside him, you and me, and offer him our hospitality." Whereupon they broke into a song. "Great news! King Fred has granted our request and kindly designed to be our honored guest." They had me at their mercy. No doubt about it. Those jokers were serious. They wouldn't share a morsel of their food unless I sat down in their cage and played along with them. It was do or die. Okay, but I had a few conditions first, and I intended to present them in a form that beat them at their own game. Surely, I had become a better poet from all my night of reading. I drew myself up, but this time without overdoing it or blowing out my cheeks. "It's true," I declared. "King Fred may possibly feel able to take the place of honor at your table, but only if your manners pass the test, and what good manners our King Fred knows best." Enrico and Caruso exchanged a glance. It must have been dawning on them that they'd met their match. "As king," I went on, I make the rules, and I'm afraid they must by all my subjects be obeyed. First, thoroughly spring clean your cage inside, for scattered food I really can't abide. The litter, too, must always be kept dry, for sodden straw offends the royal eye. As for the food itself, last but not least, King Fred on nothing but the best shall feast. Obey these golden rules, and if you do, His Majesty will deign to dine with you. Silence. Well, I thought they'll find it hard to go along with that. But what was that noise? They were hooting with laughter. Enrico and Crusoe were hugging each other and hooting with laughter. He thinks he's put one over us, said Enrico. And Crusoe yelled, he thinks they're only guinea pigs. They can't help being the way they are. He thinks we're incorrigible food scatterers and incorrigible litter piddlers. Surprise, surprise, they chanted in unison. We're adaptable types. We can behave quite differently if we choose. They went on to say, we condescend to grant your plea. The two of us plus you make 3. Feel free to join our gang because we welcome you with open paws. You're now, although then us less big, an honorable guinea pig. Well, Sir William said at length, that seems to settle the food problem. He thought for a moment. All the same, he went on, you can't live in hiding here. But why not? I asked. He stared at me in silence. Finally, he said, because it would be wrong to go behind Mr. John's back. It took a moment or two to sink in. Then I understood. I was done for. This was the end. I would have to go back to Sophie's place. I still think it's wrong, but there's only one solution that I can see. Sir William paused. We'll have to get in touch with Mr. John after all. The end of chapter 15. See you next time for chapter 16. Bye for now.